Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Pele Yoetz. Today we're on Halachic Compendiums. Very interesting this topic. We all know someone like this. So it says, how much good have the Halachic organizers, our holy sages in each generation have done for us? They have merited and bestowed merit upon the many. The merit of the community depends on them, for if not for their work, the Torah would have been forgotten from Israel. So it says, especially in our orphan generation, orphans of orphans, in which the travails of time have increased, our free time is not so agreeable to our learning with diligence as the earlier generations, and our thinking is diminutive. So it says, if we attempt to learn many books without end, who can claim that he has mastered all of them? However, by means of the Halacha compendiums, we can discharge at least some of our obligation. So really, in every generation, we know somebody who really, they become such students of the Torah, and there's always different areas, but they're so important because, in this, every generation, every generation has its challenges, and you need to have somebody who understands. Thank God, Baruch Hashem, that there are people out there who this is their what they do. This is their whole life is about studying the Torah and what we need to be doing. And when a problem comes up, generally they have the answer to it. And it is true, without them, really we'd be lost because everyone would be doing whatever he wanted. And the problem with that is that we often tend to change things to fit our needs. And that's not the way it is. The Torah has a standard, and we have to continually be striving to reach that standard, not moving the standard to where we want to be. Because again, we know that we have a Yetzirah, and it's so easy for us to fall into this, this is my level and this is all I'm going to do. And they're always pushing us to do greater. So it says, every generation needs the Halachic compendiums, such as the ones done by the Ramban, the Tur, the Beit Yosef, and the Knesset HaGadolah. And it says, and many others like them have become our eyes. So from them, others should see and emulate their works in each generation. So of course, they become the role models. And of course, we try to strive to their example. And it says, each Torah scholar upon whom God has graciously bestowed understanding and the writing of many books should attempt to benefit the many in those things that are much needed. In accord with the saying of Berachot 64a, everyone needs the owner of wheat. For example, the person who possesses much knowledge. So this is something that every person, if you're not the compendium, then you need to find yourself someone who is the benefits of a Rav. And then in this, generation, of course, with technology, there's such great teachings from all over the place. But the truth is, you really should have someone you can meet with face to face. Thus, the Parkei Avos advises us, make for yourself a rabbi. So it says they should compose halacha compendiums to the best of their ability. Some should write and condense laws of the Shulchan Aruch, others collection of general principles, and others introductions to lengthy discourses, and still other works of ethical improvement. So this is, this is always just a great thing. Whenever somebody is so full of knowledge, they should be writing what they've learned into this book, and these works live on. It helps us, because generally what they've done, if they go through, such as the Shulchan Aruch, it goes through and it gives you the day-to-day, and you don't have to go from this source and that source. They kind of condense it down and give everything to you all in one book. And this is a great one of the greatest things, one of the greatest tools we have in Am Yisrael. So it says everything that they do will be condensed and a great act of kindness. There is no greater kindness than one that affects the soul. Whoever does this brings merit to the many, and their merit is dependent on them. And they should not pay attention to the mockery of the scoffers who say, what benefit have these wise men wrought with their works to instruct in that which is already well known and popularized in the books. So, again, for example, this is, the books on tzniut. We happen to be doing one, adorn with dignity. And, a lot of the rules are kind of well known. So some people say, I think I know everything about tzniut. But you still should delve into these works, and it doesn't have to be this one in particular. And the reason is because they've taken all the sources, and you always want to be strengthening yourself in what the law is on anything, on any given thing, especially if it's something that affects your day to day. So it says, they claim that it is for no other purpose than to collect money and to claim fame of having published a book. So a lot of times we hear this, I'm not going to support the author of this book. It's just, one other thing that this person has done to put out in order to gain some kind of fame and notoriety for themselves. But I got to tell you, heaven forbid they were saying this about the Pele Yoetz, but I'm so glad that if it was happening, that he decided to write this book anyway, for this reason itself. I mean, here it is, the words now living on X years. I mean, we're talking, at least 2 centuries later. His words are living on and helping us navigate through this ever dark world. So it says, may Hashem forgive those who speak in such a way. They are certainly not right, for it is absolutely certain that these books are better than the works of complex and ingenious analysis. So it says, for what do these works offer or add to us? Most of them gather up dust because no one inquires about or seeks them. And every sage wants to comprehend on his own, to engage the halacha according to his own understanding. So it says, if a person wants to study all of the works of complex and ingenious analysis, his allotted years will come to an end, and he will not have learned even one part of 1,000 of the things that he needed to learn. As it says in Eruvin 48a, if I analyze, I cannot cover a lot of material. Of what benefit can it be for us to know the dispute between 2 Torah scholars and who said this and the other said what? And if for what purpose of learning the ways of the complex and ingenious analysis are not the works of the medieval scholars, whose hearts were open as wide as the opening of a large room, and whose wisdom was evident from their words, more than sufficient. So again, some people may say, reading these works are nothing more than 2 rabbis disagreeing with one another, but generally there's a greater explanation. And have you ever found that at times both rabbis are right? It just depends on what the situation is. And this is why you need to study both opinions. So, you have to start somewhere, and we may not, get to everything we need, but at least we'll come to Shemaim with something, right? And so it says, however, the benefit of the books of the Halacha Compendiums is great, as been said. Therefore, every Torah scholar should pursue them as one pursues the messenger through the mountains. And many people utilize them very often each day. In our time, the condensed version is the sharp, beloved, and cherished standard for everyone. People pithily find such meaning in the verse in Root 2:4. And he said to the harvesters, literally the one who makes short, may God be with you. It says, therefore, even if the individual who wants to write a work of responsa, which benefits the many by introducing new laws and deciding unresolved questions, should not be verbose and wander between the presentation of the question, the presentation of the differing opinions, and the analysis of the later authorities. So, oftentimes, sometimes a Rav will have a question that is left unanswered, and many have come after and have answered these things. And it's great. It's the continuing conversation of Am Yisrael from the generations. Very beautiful and worthwhile pursuit. And it says to shatter and to disregard and to build and to plant, and to say that this halacha statement is good and this one is not. What does it offer? What does it add? And it says, I'm concerned that in the multitude of his words he may err. Rather, the person should only write that the shortened form of the law and the essence of the rule that is needed for judgment. So in other words, a lot of times people can come in and they get down to the nitty gritty of what it is that you need to know about any halacha. And this is what's been going on throughout the years. One studies and he brings this great question. Some of them they answer and some of them they do not. And some come at a later generation, they do answer these things. And what you see today is a representation of all those generations. So again, this is why I say this is a continuing conversation. And of course, we know that death does not, it doesn't end. Your journey doesn't end because you and your goof, your neshama and your goof have parted ways. The conversation continues on, and there's still many things being discussed. So it further states that likewise, if someone wants to write up basic interpretations on Tanakh or sayings of the sages, which God has granted him, so that they are accessible to the many, he should not choose the path of wordiness. So in other words, like, get to the point, just tell us what we need to know. And we know, especially in this generation, we said it's a microwave generation, and people, they want it in 60 seconds or less. So kudos to all of you who have lasted these 10 minutes and 50 seconds. So it says, he must not shift from the presentation or the homiletical interpretation to complex analysis. Rather, he should write short, precise correspondence to the verses of Tanakh or the Talmud, sweet words mixed together with the moral exhortation and the fear of Hashem. The moral lesson that is connected to a verse is sweeter than honey and will be easily remembered. As a result, his words will be read, remembered, and recited in the synagogues of Torah scholars and in the places of learning. He will provide merit to the many, and his soul will delight when his lips open and close in the grave. By the way, this concept also, I think, gets repeated again later on in this book, and I'm going to repeat it again, but it says, in my opinion, this is the right way to follow for those who want to write books. So whenever we are studying the works, so this moment right now, as we read the Pele Yoetz, as we're debating over the words that he's saying, as you are contemplating them at home, the words of Harav Papo, Alav Shalom, are moving. They're moving. They're literally moving. And he also becomes kind of our if there's a lawlina, there should be a prosecution against us. He also becomes an advocate for us. So isn't this a great thing that we're making the Rav our advocate up in Shemaim? And it's a beautiful thing. And it's not just for this book. It's for any of them. You want to read the Rambam. You want to read the Ramban. You want to read any of them, the Chafetz Chaim. Any of them, whenever you are reading any of the sages who have done a work, whatever that is, you are, and this, I'm just so excited about it. This is just so exciting. I mean, you can have the Arizal, like he can be your advocate. This is just amazing. So okay, I have to go on, or else I'm going to lose it because it just makes me so excited. So it says, however, the authors of the Halachic Compendiums who gather concise and shortened laws together must be careful not to engage in this work unless they are able to do it properly, lest some tragic error result thereby. And I mean to say that when they have many works of the medieval later scholars in their eyes will be masters of them through rigorous analysis. Nonetheless, they must not rely on general principle. They derive from them as there is room for a mistake. And they might err by recording the exact opposite of what is written in the books, and sometimes it's found in compendiums of this type. So the best way to think about this is, that we can understand what he's saying here, that sometimes we can misinterpret what's being said. You ever get a text message? This is what I hate about text messaging, is that, when you're not hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, if you've not heard it verbally, you don't always know what the intention was. And sometimes if we give something over and it's given the wrong way, that person goes off and they, they're changing their life according to, what the person has given over to them. So it's very difficult sometimes. But again, it's that same thing, like when we read a text message, we take it the wrong way. And, so it's very difficult, but with Hashem's help, I pray that anyone who ventures out to either teach, learn, or give over, that we should all have this zechus to have this kind of divine assistance to just help us to understand. And I think more than that, to have a connection with the actual author. I pray that whoever it is, and for me, right now it's Harav Papo. I pray that Hashem would allow me to have a connection with him to understand. I think sometimes when you know the essence of a person, you start to, kind of, when you know the works of that writer over and over again, you kind of get to know their personality, their writing style, and what they were about. So sometimes it's easier when those things are questionable, that if you have this relationship with the author, that you kind of get a better idea and a sense of where they were coming from when they were writing some of these things. So it says, therefore, the contemporary sages said that it is not proper to rely on the concise halacha compendiums for leniencies or to extract money until one has thoroughly studied the topic and sees the actual source of the law. So if you're looking for a leniency in any halacha, this is, you have to be careful in this area for this, or for when you're looking to extract money from somebody. So collecting money for whatever that deals with these areas. And it says, I've heard those that say that even though the author of the Mannuel did a giant service and brought a great deal of zechus to the masses, the spirit of the sages of his generation were not pleased that he wrote a definitive halachot. So many common people who can only read his book accept his word as if they came from Sinai, and therefore they don't consult rabbinic authority. So this is, again, a big, you always, this is what's so great about having a Rav. And you always have to ask the Rav, even if it's coming from a sage. You have to ask the Rav, and whatever the Rav tells you, then you can follow what the Rav is telling you. So very important. It's not, one can't say, I learned everything from the Rambam, and therefore that's it. I don't need to ask the Rav anything. Big mistake. Ask the Rav. That's the advice of this Rav. So and we will do that. We will ask our Rav. So, again, if you don't have one, find yourself a Rav. Don't just take down something as if it came from Har Sinai on the tablet. So it says, nevertheless, sometimes there are laws in which later authorities have disagreed with the rulings and are more stringent. And in these cases, it is correct to be even more stringent. So therefore, one should admonish speakers of foreign languages that they should not rely on the works that is written is written in their native tongues without first consulting rabbinic authority. So again, a perfect example for me is that if something is written, by someone, let's say in Russian, and Russian is not my native tongue. It's not even one that I'm quite familiar with. So sometimes there are nuances in vocabulary that go on in any dialect. Doesn't have to be just Russian. For me to take a Russian book and to, especially when they say these phrases that are common in their culture, it would be a big mistake for me to do because I don't really understand what that's coming to say, So, you have to be careful. You always have to consult back with your rabbi. And it says, it's sufficient that these works make them aware of questions in order that they should have go to ask a sage. It says, I have a dream to write a book, a work concise in halachot. However, I will only write this which is forbidden, and I will not mention that which is permitted in order to avoid this kind of mistake. So it says, it is also fitting that the authors of concise halacha compendiums to perform a complete service do not wish to write about any given law. Look in this other books, since sometimes the person actually needs to know the other law and does not have the book that was referenced. This is analogous to bringing someone to a spring of fresh water and not allowing him to drink. Therefore, he must write what is written in the other book in order that the reader will have satisfied when he finds what his heart was searching for. So that concludes this chapter. But what he's saying there is that oftentimes, who knows, there could be someone listening that is about to be an author of a book, to cite even the differing opinions so that the reader understands that there is a question that came up and it was debated. Now, again, this is why, you have a Rav, and there's always, for sure, there's always someone greater than us and someone greater than them and someone greater than them. So everyone has someone they can ask. But the thing is that, at this point, so many things have been debated, right? And which is why it's great to see the differing opinions. You'll have people who have differing opinions, and you'll have commentaries that kind of almost seem to go against each other. But the truth is that in the end, they all do reconcile each other. And but without knowing what the other question is, you may be reading one argument, but you in your mind may be thinking the same thing that the other person, the other great sage, had the counter argument to. And this is why it's good to know, because then you can find out what the outcome was and when does it apply to your situation. So, that's it for today. Very, again, it always seems like, Harav Papo wrote this yesterday, because it just seems, everything just seems so spot on. It's like the ink is still wet. It's hot off the presses, like they say. But that's it for today, and I hope we'll all be together again soon. B'ezrat Hashem.